British MPs demand the UK to sanction Sri Lankan war criminals. Major General Shavendra Silva was the commander of 58th Division of the Sri Lankan Army, which is responsible for deliberately bombing hospitals and killing more than 70,000 civilians.
In 2009, Shavendra Silva is implicated in the UN report for his war crimes during the last war in Sri Lanka.
In 2019, he is promoted as the Chief Sri Lankan Army by the Sri Lankan government.
Torture and rape of Tamil youth continues to date by the Sri Lankan security forces, which is under his cover.
In Feb 2020, the US imposed travel ban on Shavendra Silva under the Appropriations Act on the basis of credible evidence of his war crimes.
In April 2021, the ITJP submitted a 50-page dossier to the UK FCDO with evidence of Shavendra Silva's involvement in the war crimes.
In April 2021, ICPPG launched a signature campaign calling for the sanctions. On 18 May 2021, an early day motion, ADM 60, was brought in the British Parliament. More than 30 British MPs jointly signed the ADM calling for sanction and independent investigation into the war crimes and genocide in Sri Lanka. In June 2021, the ICPPG submitted a petition to the British Prime Minister and FCDO based on the testimonies of at least 200 Tamil youth tortured and sexually abused by the Sri Lankan armed forces, most recently in 2019 to 2021.
In January 2023, Canada imposed sanctions on Sri Lankan officials for human rights violation.
It is now time for the UK to sanction Shavendra Silva under the global human rights sanction regime.
With the help of the ICPPG, ITJP, Redress and the Sri Lanka campaign for peace and justice, the Tamil youth and victims in the UK began to campaign their MPs. As a result of their brave and relentless campaign of the victims, a debate was held in the British Parliament in November 2022.
The victims continue to demand their MPs to publicly call the UK to impose sanctions on Shavendra Silva and other war criminals.
Well, we believe, and it's alleged, that the human rights abuses have taken place and that we hold them to account. That's why I support this campaign.
Lots of people think that the war in Sri Lanka is over, but it's not over. It's not over for the minds of the people who are refugees, whose families and loved ones were lost, were violated, who are here, who still have the mental health nightmares of that war. And they need justice, and they need to see that all that happened is being properly recorded, and that the united international community is taking action against those who were responsible. And that's why we need to have the Magnitsky sanctions in place. We need to have them against Shavendra Silva. We need to make sure that all the people who were responsible are brought to justice and that they are not accepted in this country.
I support the campaign to sanction Shavendra Silva, a man who's had his crimes withdrawn by the Sri Lankan government, but nevertheless they stand. And he should not be allowed to come to the UK, and his ill-gotten gains should be confiscated.
I'm happy to stand in support of human rights defenders anywhere and everywhere in the world. It's really important that we uphold human rights, whether it's in Sri Lanka, Israel and Palestine, Northern Ireland and the UK. Human rights apply to everybody, no matter what you are or who your opponent is. It shouldn't only just be our allies, it should be everybody is entitled to human rights.
I think it's very important that we support this. There are a lot of evil people around who need to be brought to justice for the crimes in Sri Lanka, and here I'm pointing at one.
My name's Gareth Thomas. I'm the Member of Parliament for Harrow West, and I support the campaign to sanction Shavendra Silva, the former Army General responsible for what appears to be huge atrocities at the end of the 2009 conflict. The International Truth and Justice Project submitted a 50-page dossier alleging Shavendra Silva's widespread involvement in human rights abuses, war crimes, etc., at the end of the 2009 conflict. The American government have imposed sanctions against Mr. Silva and his family, and it's only right to ask the question as to why the British government hasn't used its Magnitsky sanctions to do so. I hope the Foreign Office will look as an urgent priority to take similar action here in the UK and help to begin the process of bringing to justice those responsible of such terrible crimes.
General Shavendra Silva has committed atrocities and continues to commit atrocities in Sri Lanka, carrying out tortures and sexual abuse. I stand with the Sri Lankan people in this country and call for UK sanctions against him, and the UK training of police in Sri Lanka must stop immediately.
I believe that the UK government should apply its Magnitsky sanctions regime to General Shavendra Silva. He is credibly implicated in very serious war crimes and human rights abuses. The US government has sanctioned him and imposed a travel ban. It's time for the UK government to do the same and demonstrate that we will not tolerate human rights abuses.
Hi there, my name is Elliot Colburn. I'm the Member of Parliament for Carshalton and Wallington and Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tamils in the UK Parliament. One of the campaigns that we have been working on is to try and encourage the Foreign Office to impose sanctions as part of the UK's global sanctions regime against Sri Lankan Army General Shavendra Silva. Silva is credibly accused of war crimes during the end of the Sri Lankan Civil War. It's something that our friends and allies in the United States have already done, so we're encouraging the Foreign Secretary to follow suit.
We have a wonderful Tamil community in Croydon, but they are still suffering greatly from the impacts of the Sri Lankan Civil War. I am calling on the government to impose sanctions on General Shavendra Silva. The UK should be a leading light on human rights around the world, and we must fight for justice. We need real action, we need accountability, and we need to do that for the people in Sri Lanka, for the Tamils in Croydon, and for the diaspora around the world.
We need to sanction Silva so that we don't allow him access to the UK, and indeed we make clear the position that his behaviour was reprehensible, unacceptable, and he needs to be held to account for the decisions he took, the command of the 58th Division, and the abuse and gross violations of human rights, and possibly war crimes as well. He needs to be brought to account, and therefore it is right that the UK government issue appropriate sanctions against him. I could join the call from Tamils across the world, particularly those whose loved ones are unaccounted for, to ensure that our Foreign Secretary looks in detail at this case and follows the evidence that is undoubtedly available to take action against General Silva.
I'm Stephen Timms, the Member of Parliament for East Ham. We now have a UK mechanism for sanctions against perpetrators of human rights atrocities. In my view, we should use it to sanction those guilty of war crimes in Sri Lanka. The US has rightly designated Army Commander Shavendra Silva. He led the ground assault on the beaches of Murray Baikal at the end of the Civil War, attacking civilians, hospitals, medical staff and no-fire zones. We should sanction him too.
I'm really pleased to be here supporting the campaign from Tamils for Labour. It's very important that we as the UK continue with our long-standing tradition of standing up against human rights abuses. And that means that we must be for the sanctioning of General Shavendra Silva.
I want to say on behalf of Labour how much committed we are to bringing to justice and introducing those sanctions so that together with the United States and the UK, we can increase the pressure to bring to justice and to remember the importance of what happened, and also to establish a solution for the future where peace, reconciliation and power sharing are at the heart of a new way of approaching government in Sri Lanka.
Please support us.
Write to your MPs. Ask them to urge FCDO to sanction the Sri Lankan war criminals, including the notorious Shavendra Silva.
Ask them support to the EDM 64 tabled on 18 May 2021.
Sign the petition.
Please tell us of your comments and ideas.